is how do we structure our athletic periods so that coaches can utilize them to their full potential?
This episode of the Coach's Call podcast is presented by Answers, ANSRS, the fastest, most accurate data and video management system in football, used by major college programs and high schools all across Texas. Instant insights from Answers speeds up the game planning process during the week, ensures that the tendency data is accurate, and provides play callers with real confidence to make the best calls during the game. Visit www.answers.ai, that's ANSRS.ai, to learn how Answers can help you gain a real competitive advantage next season.
Hi, y'all. Welcome to the Coach's Call, the official podcast of the THSCA, where every conversation is about helping coaches help kids. I'm Libby Pacheco, COO of the Texas High School Education Foundation, and we're glad you're with us. Before we get to today's conversation, here's a few quick reminders. We encourage you to get involved with our Educate, Excel, Play campaign as we continue to promote and defend education-based athletics across Texas. Also, don't forget to check out the Texas Coaches Leadership Tour. When you purchase a ticket to any one of the 9 events, you'll receive access to the replay of all 9 sessions at the end of the tour. And finally, remember, as coaches, we set the standard year-round through sportsmanship, professionalism, and the example we model for our athletes and communities. So thank you to all of our programs that are engaged in continuing to lead the Texas way. We are making a difference in sportsmanship in Texas. If you want more information about any of these events, don't forget to visit our website. And now, here's today's episode of the Coach's Call.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the Coach's Call. I'm Chris Daly. Once again, I am handing the mic over to none other than Libby Pacheco. And Libby, we have some familiar guests again today. If you could introduce them and what you're going to talk about.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, thanks again, Chris. And we're going to be talking, this is just going to be a continuation of our last conversation with these two gentlemen. If you haven't had a chance to go on and listen to our podcast, part 1 of this series, I encourage you to do that. And then even prior to that, we had a conversation with Joe and Rusty Dowling from the AD Association talking about our Educate, Excel, Play. It all kind of ties in together about the importance of education-based athletics and protecting what we have here in Texas. But our two guests today are Dr. Kyle Craighead from Everise and Dr. Josh Childs from the University of Texas. Gentlemen, welcome back. And here we go again.
Awesome. Thanks for having us again, Libby.
I never left the first time.
We just had a great rock symposium. We're coming off of our rock symposium where I got to spend some time with these gentlemen as well, and where we were able to see this data really taking shape and implemented in real life in some of the programs that we do even here with THSCA. So we're going to dive a little bit more into the data and the research project that we've been working on with Everise and the University of Texas, in really trying to protect education-based athletics and learning what we're really good at in Texas and maybe where we can still grow as coaches, and using data to support all of that. But today, like I said, we're going to go deeper into it. We're going to talk about that research and the 6 pillars, the foundation of it. So let's go ahead and just jump right into it. In our last episode, we mentioned components of the 6 pillars of effective coaching. Those 6 pillars are connection, psychological safety, structure, communication, challenge, and skill development. Is that correct, Craig? Kyle, did I get that right?
You got it.
All right. So these pillars, they've actually given us a lot of structure, not only with this research, but even some of the things that we do at THSCA. Kyle, can you talk to us a little bit? How were those pillars originally developed?
So go way back to 2008. And in the business world, the questions that were being asked were, how do we measure how leaders are effectively leading their teams? And for the most part, we look at outcome measures. Well, outcome measures are great, but how are you determining over time that you're actually leading to the right outcomes? So there was a guy named Bill Ekstrom who worked in the business world, mainly in sales, thought this is something that he can actually work through. Worked with researchers at the University of Nebraska at Lincoln, and those researchers came up with the broad definitions of these six pillars. Over time, they've not changed a whole lot because the research has stood the test of time. What has changed is maybe the questions a little bit, maybe the wording of the questions. But since we've been working together, and especially here with Dr. Childs, what has changed is maybe the way that we ask the questions to student athletes, the way that the questions are constructed in a consistent format, because it's going to student athletes rather than adults. And so now with Josh's work validating the questions over time, we look at those every year. These questions line up, the research is lining up. And Josh, if you want to touch on that a little bit more for more recent pieces, but Libby, it's a long-term research project that continues and continues to grow. And what we know is that good leaders are good leaders. It's not just in one area of life, it's in all areas of life. And maybe it shows the truest in the way that coaches act and the way that coaches lead.
Yeah, Josh, you want to touch on those six pillars too, and maybe how it lined up with your research?
Yeah, so I mean, I think one of the things that stands out to me about these six pillars of effective coaching, um, you could apply them not just to coaching, you can apply them to everyday life. You can think about them in parenting, you can think about them in teaching. They're really six pillars when we want to really engage with our young people. And in the case of Dr. Craighead and I, with student athletes and coaches, particularly coaches that are involved in education-based athletics. And I think the one of the biggest things that stands out for me is how do we get coaches and people and educational leaders to really think about the role that some of these pillars play in the daily lives of students? Because it's not as if we're going around using the vocabulary of psychological safety, but it's an important part, and we can see it in our classrooms, in our fields, in our courts, when student athletes are feeling safe to take risks, ask questions, voice concerns, and speak out on things without fearing consequences or judgment or some type of backlash. And I think for coaches, and particularly new coaches in our profession, when you think about today's student athlete, how these six pillars apply in a world where our young student athletes are engaged in instantaneous things like social media and digital devices, AI, if you want to include that too. And these six pillars are core foundations when you want to think about connecting with your student athletes today, even with the numerous amounts of distractions, everything else. And so for me, when I think about these six pillars, and I've enjoyed engaging with them over the course of the last almost 2 years, they're just fundamentals for how coaches and for us as humans and educators should be engaging with our young people daily.
Well, Kyle, Josh just mentioned the psychological safety, and he kind of touched on why it matters to coaches. But is there anything else that you want to add? I mean, I hadn't thought so much about it's interesting because even in no matter what area you're in, whether you're in the business world and you're leading adults or your parents and you're leading your own kids, that idea of psychological safety is critical, and especially for adolescents. So do you want to add to anything that he said about that and why it's especially important in like in a team environment?
For sure. Psych safety, I don't know that it's the core because I think all six pillars are probably equally important. But if you don't have psych safety, it might be the one that stands out the most. And what I mean by that is, we really define it as constructing a healthy environment that allows growth and development without fear. Well, if you don't have that on a team, then athletes are afraid to push out of their comfort zone. Well, that goes to the challenge pillar. If you don't have the ability to push without fear, then I may not really work on my skill development. Like, think about golf. Am I really going to try a different swing technique? Am I going to try a different iron on a different shot if I'm not sure exactly what's going to happen, but it's just practice? Well, I need my coach to understand that this is practice, and I need my coach to understand that I'm trying something new. It may not go exactly perfectly well this time, but I'm trying it now. So in the future, hopefully it goes well and I've learned. That that constructing piece of psych safety where that healthy environment is built doesn't take, a day, it doesn't take 2 days. It takes a long time to build that environment, but you build it piece by piece. And that's a piece that is difficult to get across, especially like Josh said, to young coaches, that you build psych safety with consistency. And that's why another one of our pillars is structure, because part of building things like connection and psych safety is having the structure to do those moves, those actions that pay off every day, and so that the students know what to expect and the students know what to not expect.
So it's interesting, I think, especially as coaches, because we know that we're oftentimes, once they get to middle school and high school, we're not their first coach. And it's interesting that you said that it takes time to develop some of those things and to go through that, likely because they may have had some coaches that didn't focus on that, and they may not completely trust coaches, or they may have like the wrong thought about where coaches are. So to be able to be a young coach and know and understand that, it's important. Um, Kyle, so I'm going to stick with you because another interesting find, which was in the skill development piece, which as coaches, as a high school coach, that's really where we like to spend a lot of our time. We think that most of our role is in that skill development. But the interesting finding was that that skill development tends to be strongest when those other five pillars are also present. Can you maybe talk to what you know about that and why that might be?
Absolutely. And Dr. Childs will probably add to this, just simply because we often connect a couple of pillars together with skill development and challenge being what you're naming, Libby, is yeah, that may be what we think we're doing on a daily basis as coaches, is developing the skill in that sport. Of course, that's what we do. That's how we get measured. That's how we win or lose. That's how, people from the outside view what we do when they come to watch us play. What are they looking at? They're looking at the product, which is the development of skills and teamwork. But in order to get there, how are you connecting with these student athletes? How are you building the psychological safety so that they can push and develop new skills? And then even beyond that, how are they working on a team in terms of communication? How are they working on a team in terms of leaning on each other, and trusting that, hey, I'm kind of sacrificing myself for the good of the team at times? Well, that's all related to skill development. Because if you're giving constant feedback on how to grow and what's going well in the skill that you're practicing in that sport, that's incredibly important that you're doing that in a consistent way. Well, that's probably in structure. But see, what just happened is I've named all these other pillars that led to the skills being developed. The skills are typically what we measure in sports. Everything else is what leads to that measurement. What we do is measure that everything else as well, because we know that that's what pays off with skill development. Um, Last thing I'll say here is think about the last time you learned something new, like a new skill. Maybe it's guitar, you're doing Duolingo and learning another language, whatever it may be. Think about how hard you could push yourself in that skill. And then think about what would it be if I had my best coach sitting beside me, the best coach you've ever had, sitting beside you who was also an expert in that, whatever thing it is that you're trying to learn, whether that's guitar or singing or speech or another language. Think about that and how you would grow so much faster. Think what the support would be, the one-on-one support, telling what you're doing well and telling how you can improve consistently. That's what coaches do. But why does that coach bring so much to you in that learning experience? It's because they connected with you. It's because they had like safety with you. It's because they had structure, the communication's clear, and they could challenge you. Well, now you're learning the skills. That's what coaches do every day. And that's the beauty of these six pillars working together.
Can I add one thing to that too? I think it's also important that oftentimes, and I love what Dr. Craighead just added, but I want to add another layer too, because oftentimes it's either forgotten about or it's thought of like, yeah, we do that, but only, or thought about only being done when, the environment's good or there's lots of winning going on. But the aspect of fun is so important to high school student athletes. And we've seen that consistently throughout our data, which is this idea that if I'm having fun, if the sport's fun, if the coach is making it fun, then I'm more likely to develop the skills, to feel a sense of connection with my coach, right? Like the aspect of fun, we cannot forget fun as being a part of why student athletes engage in this type of sport that they do, and probably why many of us got into coaching. We enjoy what we do. We enjoy seeing young people learn. We enjoy winning and we enjoy learning from the losses as well, right? It's the fun, it's the process of all of that. And I think oftentimes that gets missed between the scoreboard and the wins and losses. But fun is such an important, and we have a report coming out in a couple of weeks, actually, a new report that's tying some of these pillars together and the connections. And resoundingly throughout our report, we're going to highlight this idea of fun because coaching should be fun. Playing sports should be fun. And especially playing sports at the high school or even interscholastic high school or even the middle school level should be fun. And that's what keeps kids connected, engaged, feeling psychological safety, willing to take risks, willing to feel communication, and willing to engage in really spend time practicing on their skill and development.
It's interesting you said that. On our Texas Coaches Leadership Tour, we have just a couple of weeks ago, we had the privilege of listening to Kat Osterman, multi-Olympic medals, championships, things like that. And she talked about when she presented to our coaches about how she almost quit the sport because it wasn't fun. And what got her back into it was she rediscovered the fun. And you're talking about somebody playing at a super high level. And even at that level, she recognized how important that was. And as coaches, I think when you step back and think about why we got into the profession, it was, like you said, it was for the fun. And that's all those other things that you listed on the pillar besides this, skill development is our why. It's the culture piece. It's the coaching beyond the game. It's all the things that we talk about that we know make the big impact through, and we're just using sport as an avenue to be able to do that. And just being able to recognize for our coaches to recognize their role in that was huge. Love that. So let's talk about how this data was gathered. We touched on this last time. This research you're talking about, it included more than 34,000 student athlete assessments nationwide and over 11,000 here in Texas. Josh, can you walk us through how this data was actually connected and then how it was analyzed?
Yeah, and Dr. Craighead, please fill in the gaps of what I missed. She appreciated the shout out last time, so I'm gonna do it again. Ashley Olson, that's with Everise and has worked with many district leaders and districts around the state, around the country, I should say, is super important in terms of helping to begin initiating those conversations with districts that want to be a part of this important research, and being able to start the process for collecting that data. So entering into agreements with school districts and then starting the process of beginning to collect survey assessments from student athletes. 8 to 10 minute survey given to student athletes typically during this athletic period, once in the fall, once in the winter, and once in the spring, asking questions about around those 6 pillars about their coach. And so that data is collected throughout the entire school year. So we are now, I think, morphed in or have transitioned into the spring part of the 25-26 school year. So what's going to be great is we're going to have 2 years going into next school year of data to look at and look across. And so that data is collected, and depending on the state, and I'll talk specifically here in Texas, we worked with you all at THSCA to make sure that we had great representation across all of the THSCA regions. So we're not just focusing on the major urban centers like Houston, Dallas, Austin, San Antonio, but we're also getting places out in East Texas, West Texas, the Panhandle, and along the southern border. Get that data collected in, it's entered to a system. There's some aspects in which athletic directors and coaches can actually see some of that data specifically tied to them individually or collectively, excuse me, as a whole. And then it's analyzed. So we take a look, we ask questions, we get together with Dr. Craighead, myself, Ashley, ask some questions to it and analyze it across the different themes of really trying to see what are the percentages of how student athletes are responding to it. What are some correlations or things that we can look at relationships between, let's say, a psych safety and communication. And then we present that back or, write up reports or present findings to relevant stakeholders. That's super important so that they know that that not only does the research matter, but that the impact that coaches are having on their student athletes are profound. Because as I've heard you all say at THSCA for so many times, many times over and over again, we've always been able to tell the story. Now we have the data to back that up. And what I'm most excited about through our process is now starting to add in that academic piece to that and being able to tie that with things like student attendance and academic outcomes and so forth, which will be super powerful as we engage more into what this means for policy and practice. Dr. Craig, anything you want to add or maybe misspoke on?
No, I think you nailed all of it. Just want to make sure everybody knows that all across Texas, nobody can see an individual coach's data set. That's theirs. So this isn't something that's evaluative towards coaches. It's a growth model, and it's also a celebration model. So if a district AD is looking at their scores, they're looking at it across the district. They're seeing all the coaches across their district average together. So it's completely anonymous for the student athletes. We track nothing, not IP addresses, not timestamp, nothing. So there's no PI involved with the student athletes, and really it just goes to the coach about what the student athletes said about their experience, and then from there the coach is in a safe environment to grow and learn. I do want to shout out to all the ADs and building administrators, the building leaders who work with us on this. They get us the lists of their coaches at the beginning of each season, and they work through all the rest of the pieces of administering the assessment. While we streamline that a lot, there's still a lift that exists there, but they see the power of what this gives in what THSCA needs. But we need to shout out them because they've done such good work. They get emails constantly from Mary Jones and Ashley Olson about, hey, we need this, or can you get me this? And we'd be remiss if we didn't shout out Libby here, because she really has spearheaded this. I mean, from day one all the way to now, she sends emails and says, hey, I know this is important. We need to make sure we get this part done to people all over Texas. So while all of THSCA is a huge leader in this, Libby, don't want to embarrass you here on your own podcast, but you really are the person that spearheads it, and you're the face of this. So we appreciate that.
I just want the listeners to know that there's a small tear going down Libby's cheek right now. So,
well, definitely, it's so funny when the three of us get together, and I'm sure everybody else around us in the room. I think we kind of nerd out on the statistics and the numbers and that kind of thing. But the one thing that is consistent across our entire office is we just believe in the work our coaches are doing, and we wanted desperately to be able to prove how impactful they are. And so whenever we have a chance to be able to do that, work with somebody who can do that for us and help us do that, it's important for us. So let's talk about exactly turning, like, what does this really mean for coaches? Um, Again, we can nerd out about all the research and the numbers and the data and coefficients and this and that or whatever. But one of the questions coaches and ADs ask when they hear about this research is like, okay, what do we actually do with it? So, Kyle, how can coaches use this data to help guide their own professional development? And what should a coach do if they want to intentionally start growing in those 6 pillars?
Yeah. So as a former professional development leader at a large school district, that's my background. One of the most frustrating things in professional development is not knowing where to focus. You can focus in 1,000 areas, and we all know how that goes. It means you get better at nothing. What we need to know are what are the 2 areas where I want to focus. And one thing that I want to say before I go deeper into that is that doesn't mean those 2 areas are your lowest scoring areas. It could mean that you're looking for the highest lever. And that's why we do these correlations, because sometimes you pull one lever and it actually pulls 4 down the line. Well, what we do with our data, the coach gets their data back based on what the student athlete said. They can go on our app and they can view, hey, these are my top 3, these are my bottom 3, these are areas where I grew from last year. These are what the athletes are saying. And on that app automatically, our friend at THSCA, our friend with Everise, Stephen Mackey, and his team at 2 Words, they've made coaching videos. And the beauty of what we put together with Mackey and his team is those coaching videos automatically populate to you for the ones that you need the most based on your scores. So there really is no lift for you. It's just log into the app, see the scores, see the video. If you reload it, you're probably getting a different video. Maybe it's your second score that Mackey's video goes through. Anyone who's worked with him or has heard him speak or has seen him lead in these ways, you know that these are actionable insights that he's put together. Mackey's team is incredible, whether it's Colton or Luke. They're just really good at what they do. And we've actually heard it this weekend at Rock Stuff, Libby, was a coach told me I listen to Mackey videos based on my scores on the way to school as they drive. So they kind of use it as a podcast. And by 3 o'clock practice, they're implementing 2 or 3 things they learned from Mackey. It's that actionable. It's not something you need to go make a strategic plan about. It's something I can try today because it works and it's coming from other coaches and it's specific to you. And the best part is that I don't have to wonder if I'm choosing the right thing. My student athletes told me what the right thing was. And that's the beauty of this whole process is this is really celebrating coaches, but it's also giving coaches feedback that they probably never would have had a chance to get before.
So, Josh, that's huge. Again, I know I was a part of some districts. Again, going into summer, we all have coaches' convocations, we have coaches' meetings, and I was in charge of some professional development for coaches, like trying to put all of that together and trying to weed through like all the thousands of different possibilities of what we can talk about and focus on. And so I know this data would have been super helpful for me in again, addressing not just the shortcomings of the coaches in our districts, but also like celebrating and looking at what are the strengths and maybe learning from the coaches in our districts that are doing it well. All the things that can be super, super helpful for that. But Josh, you mentioned earlier some other states. You know, this overall data that you guys have gathered, you've looked at student athletes from and data from other states across the country. When you compare Texas to other states, are there any trends or lessons that stand out? Maybe are there things that are being done in other states particularly well that Texans can learn from?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would I would caution us and and this is not a non-answer because I will answer this, to look at this as a sort of comparison between states. I think first what we need to do is celebrate coaching, and particularly high school coaching first and foremost, which is super important, especially when we have states and states that are part of our study where there's questions about even having state associations or limiting activities or having communities and parents pay for their students to actually participate in high school athletics and so forth. So I want to caution as I give my answer about like seeing this as a comparison and like what other states do well and what do we do bad in or could improve in or vice versa. But I would say two things on that. One, I think is the value that we have in Texas about the role of the teacher coach is so important because there's multiple points of impact that a coach in Texas has that coaches in other states don't have because they don't have to necessarily have that teacher coach role, right? And so that means that a coach in Texas has time to really pour into their student athletes at multiple points of the day. On the flip side of that, coaches in other states are able to have more time, maybe concentrating on a solo sport or to be able to do that sport full time all day during the day and then go coach at the high school level, right? Which means here in Texas, what Kyle was talking about the role of professional development and things like coaching school are super important because there's such limited time for our coaches in Texas to really concentrate and hone in on their sport during the day because they're serving in educator roles or maybe leadership roles in their district or school or paraprofessional roles or driving the bus or whatever other kind of positions that they have, right? And so the professional development opportunities that we give to our coaches is super important because in other states, they can just focus on that sport. That's the thing they do, right? And so I think that's one thing of like of a lesson learned is like how do we make sure that our state stays at the forefront of being innovative when it comes to training and equipping our coaches. The second thing I want to focus on is then we have athletic periods in our state. And you will be surprised when you go and talk to other folks in other states, and they're like, wait a second, you have a whole period, 45 minutes, hour and a half, where you can just do the sport? That's that's crazy. That's unreal. Like, what is that even? I can't even imagine what that looks like, right? And so for us, I think it's to value the fact that we have such a thing in Texas and to make sure that we are utilizing it. Coaches, athletic directors across the state are using our athletic periods to their fullest potential and that our upper level administrators, our superintendents, our school boards, our community know and understand the value that these athletic periods bring, not just to what happens in the performance that they see on the court or field, but also how it translates into classroom and in the hall type of behaviors and interactions and so forth. And so I think for us there is how do we structure our athletic periods so that coaches can utilize them to their full potential? And again, beyond just just winning in practice and skill development, so that we are building on psych safety, so that we're building on connection, so that we're building on communication. And then the final thing I want to say, I know I said two things, but I want to add one other thing too, because I can't leave with two. I got to go with three. Is that how then do we provide the structure and infrastructure to support our coaches? So thinking beyond just professional development, what else do our coaches need in the state that we can leverage policymakers, community members, important stakeholders so that they see the value of education-based athletics? Because what our coaches bring to the table, to their fields, to their courts, to their classrooms on a every day is so important. And I think telling the story is a part that we have to do a better job in the state of Texas, where other states do it very well because they're smaller. because they don't have as many sports or because they don't have as many student athletes competing at the high school level, right? So it's not as big of a message spread out. But we have 18 countries within the state of Texas, and we have a lot of people we've got to communicate the value of athletics to in the state. And I think that's something we need to also concentrate on and emulate from other states.
And Josh, to add to
I
that,
have, oh, go
I
ahead.
think
Yeah.
I think that to a degree, being born and raised in Nashville and now spending about half my time in Texas, it there's a big piece that some people in Texas think that sports will always be around the way that they are because they always have been. And other states, especially Northeast states, have been in this fight for decades to prove their worth, to prove why these athletic associations matter. And what we never can do is be complacent. You go to coaching school, like you were mentioning, Dr. Childs. You go to coaching school, and there's 20,000 coaches there. Yeah, sure, there's full court set up down there to talk about the skills, but you know what else there is? There's rooms to go in and talk about the psychological aspects of coaching. I don't think that's happening most places, but much has been given in terms of large size in Texas, especially with people like THSCA, but they don't take that for granted. They work their rear ends off to make sure that every minute's maximized. Every coach is getting what they can get to the maximum level, whether you have 35 years of coaching or you're year one, whether you've been a head coach for 30 years or you're the fourth assistant coach in your sport. There's something there for you to be maximized. And that's what everyone needs to take away is that we all need to take that level of fervor when we talk about coaching, when we tell the positive story.
I think that's been our goal, right? Is make sure that we're serving all areas of coaches, all of those six pillars, because we know that that's what our coaches are going to need for their kids, and we know it's what's best for them. And at THSCA, we see this train coming, and that's why this data is so important, and it's so important that our coaches are having this conversation because we have seen what has happened in athletics and education in other states, and just being able to continue to improve, to prove our worth, and to show the impact, so that way no one else, that there is a threat. There is a threat to what we know in Texas, and it's coming. And so as long as we can kind of continue to improve our worth, then I think our coaches can feel good about what they do. So guys, we're coming to the end. I know this is gone. Our time it's gone really, really fast. But I have a couple more questions. Kyle, this feels like just the beginning of like a bigger conversation. Like there's more. Can you tell us what the next steps are for this work?
So we never will lose the pieces that we work with on coaches, and that's to tell that positive story for coaches to get the professional development that's targeted to them. But I would say that the pieces that are always developing that really kind of changed maybe with the landscape of national government, local government, state government is what are the leaders doing with this data? What are they doing with the aggregates? And that's not just you all at THSCA. I think that it's even more important for the district ADs to make sure that their superintendents are seeing this data and the impact that they are having as an athletic department on the school environment as a whole, and not just the culture pieces. Of course, the culture pieces matter, maybe more, but they have to track that and say, look at what we're doing for attendance. If you cut athletic period and 90% of the kids said it's the favorite part of their day, what's going to happen to attendance if we're worried about attendance? What's that do to funding? It's knowing how to talk about those areas and then knowing how to say, this is what's important to us. We have to make sure that we have the data to back it up. And I want to shout out Lance Moffett at Hayes ISD because he brings this up a lot about a bond that they had issued. And he used this data, superintendent used this data to help get that bond through. And to quote their superintendent, said, I don't know that we would have gotten it without this data. Well, when you're trying to get enhanced facilities at your schools, how do you do that on the athletic end when people think, well, I don't know that that really is what we need to be spending money on with schools? Well, what if that's creating an experience that makes so much of a difference? What if that's the kids who are taking part in this, their grades are going up? What if their mental health is improving? What if their discipline is going down? That makes all the difference in the world. It's a whole different story, Libby, that is being told. I know that I hear Joe Martin. It seems like every time he talks in front of people, he's bringing something about this up. And the reason is simple is because we haven't told this story so long. Now we have it. We can't stop telling it.
Josh, what about you? Can you give us a quick preview? You said you got something else coming out in a couple of weeks. Can you give us a quick preview about what's next?
You've said quick twice. I got it. Yeah. So in a couple of weeks, we're going to release a new report that looks at the intersections of the pillars, the 6 pillars that we discussed on this coach's call, and what they mean and the relationship between each of those and how that influences and impacts coaching and what they can do with that, knowing what that data says about their profession. And yeah, we're looking forward to releasing that here in the coming weeks in March 2026.
Hey, Kyle, if there's a school district, there's a program out there that has not gotten involved in this research, what can they do? How do they contact you? What do they do to get involved?
Yeah, so easiest way is to go to everrise.ai. That's EVERRISE.ai. They can fill out a form on there, and that kicks to us. If they want to email me directly, then I can get them set up with what we need. It's Craighead@everrise.ai. That'll come right to me, and it's anyone on this show, anybody at THSCA. If you're friends with them, they'll know how to get in contact because we work together so often.
Well, Kyle, Josh, thank you guys again for taking time out of the important work that you're doing to continue this conversation. And for our coaches listening, just understand the message from this research is clear that what you do matters. Those relationships you build, the culture you create, the way you're challenging and supporting your athletes, all of it has a measurable impact. It's not just the wins and losses. So keep fighting the fight. And again, if you want to get involved with this research even more, just contact our office if you weren't able to write all that information down from Kyle. I appreciate your time. Chris, thanks for your time as well.
You bet. And thank you, Libby, for your leadership in this. I think the threat is real. The data is important. And all the listeners, please subscribe, share this, because that's the only way we're going to let everybody know. Thank you, Kyle. Thank you, Joshua. And thank you, Libby, so much.
Thanks, Chris. Thank you, Libby.
Hey, coaches, did you know we're now offering shows for all sports? That's right. Whether it's basketball, volleyball, softball, baseball, football, soccer, you name it, we've got you covered. If you're looking for a way to showcase your program, promote your players, and highlight the amazing things happening with your team, our coaches shows are the perfect solution. Plus, our business model lets you or your booster club raise money while building excitement and support for your program. Don't miss the opportunity to take your team's story to the next level. Find out how you can get your very own coaches show. Reach out to Chris at 713-269-4620 today. That's 713-269-4620 because every team deserves the spotlight. Hey, of course, I want to thank our guest, but I also want to thank you. I want to thank you for giving me what I consider the most valuable thing you can give, your time and your attention. And I know you don't do it to hear me. You do it for the great messages provided by the THSCA. And hey, if you'd like to associate your company with the THSCA and the Coach's Call podcast, limited sponsorship opportunities are available. You can reach out to me, Chris Daly, 713-269-4620, or head over to my website, freshmediaworks.com. Once again, thank you so much for supporting Texas high school coaches. Please share this show out to everybody you can so that we can help share these important messages. Thanks again, and we'll catch you next time on The Coach's Call. The interviews in this show are brought to you by the Texas High School Coaches Association. THSCA provides to its more than 26,000 members access to the people, events, tools, and resources to help them thrive in the profession, become trusted leaders in their communities, and live balanced and successful lives. The work and sacrifice coaches do every day is vital to the development and success of student athletes. The THSCA supports these efforts. We fight for every coach, provide them with the connections and resources to improve their lives, and help all student athletes throughout the state enjoy lasting success. The mission statement is simply this: to help and serve Texas high school coaches as they work to help and serve student athletes. Helping coaches help kids. For more information on the THSCA, visit www.thsca.com.